Welcome back, Diane,
Thank you. Thank you.
to everybody, to our Soul Light Collective. Diane and I have been talking a lot about light language. It's been coming up, and we wanted to come in today and talk a little bit more, like getting into it a little bit more, and like um, how we use it, but it's more of it's how it's part of us. I don't want to get confused too much on like outside of a business practice, but we do really use it for ourselves and for healing and being around people and managing ourselves through the day and helping us to move through difficulties that we go through. So today we're going to talk a little bit about transmuting and starting with transmitting. And that would be the, I start with transmitting. That would be the expression of the light language. That would be our opening of our channel and having the messaging coming through outside of uh, language, like that being more in that linguistic space. So transmuting, excuse me, I keep saying transmuting first. We want to talk about transmitting.
The two T's.
Um, the two T's.
T
They're
squared.
it almost feels like, Diane, like it's kind of like the out and the end. It's right. So the transmitting is really that
Yeah,
outward
it's the
expression.
outward and the inward, right?
Right. In the inward, I wanted to say the inward, but I was stopping myself a little bit. So transmitting light language. Um, I wanted to open a little bit with kind of like how to play with it a little bit. And there's so many layers to expressing it and how many ways we can do it. And I am often that person speaking it to the dog on the street, or when I go for my nature walks, I usually trip on squirrels. I have a connection with squirrels. I don't know what it is. And last time I was out doing video recordings, I was interacting with a squirrel, and I have a recording of it, which is so funny. And I captured a squirrel up in right above me in the tree, and he was chipping at me. And I always stop, like, oh, you want to communicate? It's like there's that intuitive knowing, like, oh, we're going to play. And I will start to speak and transmit that. Um, it's like my channel will open and I will be able to express to the squirrel or to the dog or to the beautiful birds. And it's not even, it's just so crazy. And I will start and I'll start into a conversation with the squirrels, and they respond. And like I think it's wild. They'll stop and they'll chirp back and we'll get a rhythm going.
It's
And
like
like that's
Snow
just like one
White. You're
layer.
Snow White in the
I'm
forest.
Snow White of the forest. And I also was sharing that I had this beautiful, every time when I was in Scotland and I was interacting with the Highland coos, I was speaking. A lot of times people couldn't hear me, the wind was blowing so much. But I was speaking to the animals and I was getting that reaction back. And that's just like that beautiful, fun layer of of what needs to come through, what needs to be expressed, what my heart is feeling, and how I connect. And that is me transmitting my light language and my codes. So I'm gonna turn it over to you to talk a little bit about how you feel about transmitting, how that plays for you.
Yeah, I'll tell you something that happened just the other day. And thank you for all that. I feel you're not even speaking light language, and I feel the energy coming through. Just talking about it and picturing. I was thinking of that other movie, and I can't remember her name. It's like a Cinderella story. She's got red hair. She's in New York City, and she's just like all
Oh,
the
and
angels.
Enchanted
Enchanted,
was,
is it
I don't know,
Enchanted?
yeah, with Giselle, yeah.
Um, that's the image that was coming to me. Excuse me, 1 second.
Yep.
Um, but well, I'll tell you two quick stories. So I was at my neighbor's the other day, and their dog is deaf. It's this beautiful yellow lab, just in love with him. And I started speaking light language to him. And again, he's deaf, but I was just channeling some energy to him. And I think I sent you a video of it.
Did.
He just started spinning around in circles. He was so happy and excited. He had this big smile on his face. He was feeling the energy of it, even though he couldn't actually hear it.
Right.
So that was fun. And then just the other day, I was playing pickleball actually with my family outside, and these two men came and sat on a bench right outside the fence of where we were playing, watching us. And the younger man said, "It's my dad's birthday. He's 105." And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, that's amazing. And so after the game, I went out. The younger man was on the phone somewhere, but I just was like, I told my family, I'm like, I just want to talk to this man for a minute. I'm thinking, such wisdom and stories this held in this person, and probably he was clearly being walked or taken on an outing. Probably doesn't get out too much. That's my assumption. He was wearing, I think he even had maybe a hospital gown on. But I went up to him and I started talking to him, and he just kind of looked at me and smiled, just his twinkling in his eyes. And he just nodded his head, but he wasn't responding back to me. And I thought, I don't think he understands what I'm saying. I don't think he speaks English. And I
Mm.
think he maybe responded in another language. And I just started speaking. And it just like, it was this connection, right?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was beautiful. So that it's a transmission of love. And I do it when I'm at a stoplight and, there's a homeless person coming up to my
Mhm.
car, and I will just, bless them and channel something for them.
Yeah.
So, and
I
yeah,
I didn't mean to interrupt.
no.
I was so you were talking about that, like that elderly man. I'm thinking about, and I know you also have had this experience. We haven't talked about this. Um, Babies,
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh,
especially
yes.
especially these babies now, right? Like it's one thing maybe 20 years ago to have been able to do that and express it. They would have hauled me off. There
There's
goes my
your
thumb.
your thumb.
Um, but and I'm not surrounded by children, but little ones. But I know that when I do interact, and I have two little great nephews, and very early on, I found myself very drawn to lean in and
Mhm.
speak with them, and before they could speak back, and just to watch their reactions, and like just there was always this beautiful like knowing, like auntie knows, like, and I don't even know what that is, but and you've had some experiences with the older children.
All ages, babies, and ooh, there's a hawk flying right outside my window. Yes, all ages. Not so much the older, but I would say under the age of five, babies
Yeah,
to 5-year-olds, because they're wide open, most of them. I have this one little neighbor he's 3, and I was speaking it the other day, and I've known him since he was a baby, and I have been speaking it to him since he was a baby, and he looked at me the other day and he goes, "What are you saying?" I'm like, "Oh no, he's getting too old."
and I
Stop
think
saying
I
that. He said, "Stop saying that."
right, and I think that I have an observation that these babies who are here right now are on their mission, and a friend of mine expressed to me recently, and beautifully so, that when she speaks to her grandson, she feels that she's receiving codes back.
Mhm.
Like there's a beautiful like exchange happening. Like right, we think we're transmitting, and we're always receiving.
We're always receiving.
And that just, and it goes back even just to like the birds. I have birds who just land out of the blue, like you're not supposed to be here, and I'll hear them, like and then I'll look, and have a moment with a bird, and I find myself speaking back to the bird, and I know I'm receiving codes as they're transmitting to me. And then I know that I'm speaking codes to them, and then they're flying off to deliver them. And how beautiful, right? And someone who's not experiencing that may look at me like, oh God, she's talking to the birds again. But I'm in my channel. I know how I feel. I know what's happening around me. And I also did want to just jump in and say that I would transmit to anybody who came into my purview, like you're here, but I would not push it onto somebody. And I think
Right.
that's something that you discern, that like I'm not going to turn to somebody who's angry in the supermarket line and be like, you need this, and to
Right.
impose myself. Um, but I do find that there are times when I'm out, um, even driving, and I get myself worked up that I have to, like I need to like, okay, you're fine. Just keep going, let it go, let it behind, let the person pull out or whatever. Um, we just have to discern that, not to push it onto somebody not wanting to receive it. And that's part of the work.
And that's a beautiful point, because there are people who aren't channeling it vocally.
Hmm.
And it's really about holding a vibration, right? Holding a frequency, which can change a room. If you're in a room of people and you are holding this higher frequency, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to, you don't even have to move, right? You're just there, and you are
I
so
am.
aligned
Yeah.
to your source, to the source, to our source, to that source energy, that it's again, it's that ripple effect. The energy is moving outward. And if we have the intention of just holding that space, that container of love and of light, because that is why we're all here, that is our purpose. um, we trust that something greater than ourselves is going to um, transform on
Hmm.
whatever level, or whoever is, in that room. There will be a shift of some sort. It might not happen in that moment, but it will start to happen. It will start to activate or ignite something within their DNA. But we have free will, right? And
Yeah.
so many people choose to stay in their victimhood, or choose to stay asleep and in the status quo. But more and more people are waking up. I wanted to, before we move on to anything else,
Hmm.
um, you were talking about light codes. So for those watching who may not really know what that term means, versus light language, maybe you could talk a little bit about codes and
Yeah.
explain
So
that.
like I feel like light codes is something for me was something I didn't necessarily like train or learn about, but more opened to, oh, that's what I'm doing. It was like it was a
Yeah.
self-realization of something I was already experiencing. Um, and I know when I write early on, when I was right channeling, there would be squiggles and forms that would come out on paper. And I would be like, what is that? Like what did that? I was in my channel and I'm open and I'm writing and I'm connected with my highest self, and these codes would come out on paper. And when I stepped into more of the light language, and like, what is this? And going down that road, I was like, oh, that's a written code. Like that's written, it's almost like written light language. And my experience was that I used to, early on in my TikTok days, I would sit, and this is crazy. I used to sit and the sun would be coming in behind me. And I actually just posted one on my Instagram recently, and I would be doing this on screen. And I thought I was just moving my hands. And I had somebody comment, like, I can energetically, this is what somebody said, I can energetically see the patterns of what you're writing.
Mm,
And it was like, for me, I was like, wow, someone could see that. Like, and then that brings like, and you see people who do have these light code artwork,
right.
and you'll start to trip on these things. They're out there.
Mhm.
They're beautiful, and they resonate with you right away. And sometimes you have to kind of spend time with it, feeling it, or sometimes it's just like, nope, that's not for me. Um, and it's an expression through movement. So it's outside of the voice and the throat, and it's the vibration, like you were just talking about, standing in the room. Um, and And I just feel like we all do it a little differently. And I know that for me, a lot of times it comes through clairvoyantly about
Mhm.
what I'm going to do. I'm actually seeing it. Like I'll see a geometric pattern approach, or I'll just be doing that with my hand. And I'm at the point now where I can barely speak light language without moving my hands at the same time, whether it's under the table where you can't see it, or I'm over here. It's just part of me and it's part of my expression.
Right.
Um, but it's nonverbal, but it's no less potent.
Yeah.
How do you work with it and you feel about it?
Yeah, I like you when it's coming through tonally through my voice, it's very rare that my hands aren't moving. I can move it to I've listened to music and on my TikTok I have a couple videos that I filmed of me channeling it with the energy with my hands to music, to a song where I'm not, I'm picking up the energy of the song and the lyrics in the song. Um, and I'm not seeing it clairvoyantly like you. I'm more clairsentient. So I'm a
Mhm,
feeler. I'm feeling the energy of it, uh, or hearing it,
mhm.
clairaudience. Is really how it comes to me. And I think you could say light language is coding, right?
Yep.
The energy, the frequencies coming through the voice are codes, also written out, how people write it, how I write it. It does look, it was funny. I did some yesterday with a silver pen on a white piece of paper, and I had it on my table. My mother came over and she picks it up. My daughter's an artist. She picks it up. She goes, oh, just looking at, oh, this is beautiful. What is this? Did Claire do this?
Right.
This looks like something you buy in a gift store, but it's so unusual. What is it? And I just said, oh, I was just doodling.
It's
Um, my mother
it's and
she
it's
doesn't
so
really
funny
know
because
what I'm
I
doing.
literally have one, like I literally
Oh my
gold,
gosh, it looks
silver. I
just like
have one
that. It
sitting
looks
that I
just
had
like
just
that.
done that the other day, right?
You and I write very similar coding.
Yes. Now I know the dialects that I'm writing here, but I'm not going to
Ah,
talk about that yet.
yeah, yeah. And I'm saying it as I'm channeling it. Sometimes it's not out loud. As I'm writing it, like I can hear it, whether I'm actually
Yeah.
speaking it or not.
But
That's so
you're
interesting.
transmitting it, right? It
It's a
doesn't, that's how
transmission,
it all comes under that umbrella of moving it out.
moving it
And
out.
when you were talking, I was having this beautiful visual of two people standing like with each other and just almost watching, um like it just be so simple. It's almost like seeing musical notes going from flowing
Mm,
back and forth between
yeah,
two people. Like it's so simple of a concept, but then my journey, do I trust this? Is this safe? Am I okay to do this in this lifetime? Has been like, is that for me? Should I be doing that? And I had to go down all of those, and should I be expressing it? Should I be showing people? Um, and that is the journey, and some people it's just so beautifully right there for them, and they've been doing it for their lifetime. I have a daughter who's an artist, and I see her work, and I'm like, she is channeling her, right? And I'm not that person. I'm the Capricorn, and I'm very like, give me a tutorial, and it's supposed to look as, and that's just the beautiful flavor that we all bring,
yes,
um,
yeah,
of the individual, right?
right. And I believe that most artists are channeling, right? They're in the
Yeah.
flow, they're in the zone.
Authors,
Authors,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. There's
You were
yeah.
talking about, you said something, and I'm lost in the conversation, but it was a beautiful segue because I did want to talk about, oh, you were talking about showing up as the vibration in the room.
Mm,
And I thought that was a beautiful segue into transmuting,
mhm.
right? Because energy moves and energy needs to be moved at times. And how do you like transmuting? Where do you go with that word? What does that mean for you?
Well, thank you. I immediately go to I'm just going to put it out there, to my marriage, to my family, my relation to
Our
those
general
closest to
environment.
me. in my general environment, they have not been. I was actually reading a journal last night, an entry of just over a year ago. It was like February 12th, 2023. And I I saw in my journal actually that you and I spoke, I think it was February 9th was when we
Mm,
reconnected last
I
year.
think it was, yeah.
And just in case you missed our first debut video, Karen and I worked together in a in the corporate world in Boston or
Way
outside of
back in the
Boston
90s.
back in the 90s. And um, I live in North Carolina now, so we got disconnected from each other over time and just life. And then got reconnected last year through light language, really. Uh, I saw her posting in a Facebook group that I was in, and I was shocked.
What is she
The
doing?
Karen that used to make fun of me for going to yoga classes,
Yoga.
and here she
Because I was
is.
afraid. Why would I ever
She
go to
was
yoga?
afraid. She was afraid. Anyways, so a year ago, so I've been in the holistic health and wellness field for since about 2005 or six, and trained as a Reiki master teacher, massage bodywork therapist, yoga instructor, health coach. I have a gajillion certifications, hypnotherapist, all of those.
Hypnotherapist. Yep.
But my older daughter was asking me if I would do some energy work with her. She wasn't feeling well, I think, at the time, and so it's like, sure. She doesn't ask me that a lot. She used to ask me for massages a lot, but I hope she doesn't watch this. She'll probably not like me talking about her, right? But anyways, I was doing some energy work with her, and she was not aware of my channeling light language, but I felt such a strong, it's like when you can suppress it, right? When you're channeling, it's not like this spontaneous thing. At least for me, it's not like I can not do it, but I'm the feeler that I'm feeling the energies wanting to come through. So I said to her, I said, I'm really feeling called to speak what's called light language over you if you're open to it, because you always want to get somebody's permission, right? And
Yes.
she was, and I didn't really explain too much about it, but it was just coming through, and her eyes shot open and stared at me. What language are you speaking? Does dad know you're doing
I
this?
know.
Does dad know about
Right.
this? And
You did this online?
he didn't. He didn't know at the time. And it wasn't long after that she brought it up in front of him, like, what's that thing, that light language thing you were doing with me? Does dad know yet? So it came out, and um I sing it around my house. It comes
Mm,
through in song when I'm in my home space when the family's around, and I'll just start channeling. I feel the energy is angelic, very angelic, coming through. And so I have seen huge shifts in my relationships with my family members over the past year, I would say. And because you're changing the frequency, not just for yourself, but for the environment. And you can use it to clear rooms, clear,
yeah.
toxic energies, dark energies, negative energies, not just in people, but in your spaces, because everything is made of energy, right?
Yeah.
Everything is made of energy. Does that answer your question? I can't
No,
remember
it
what
does.
your
And
question was.
and again, these are
Oh,
very organic
transmuting. Yeah, we're
transmuting.
non-scripted here.
I know this is all organic. We bring up a subject and it's like, let's talk about it. Let's not even get into it. And so when I was listening beautifully to like that very loving environment, right? Transmuting through that beautiful, loving space. And a lot of times for me, the transmuting technically comes in. Like I go more to like the technical where I would use it in a session when I was first practically trained in Reiki. we're going to talk about all that in another one. I was practically trained in Reiki. It was like, you need to go to the end of the table and you need to transmute at the end of a session.
Mm,
And I really struggled. Like, what is that? What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? And I had to work with that for a long time. And over time, what I've learned, once I opened up to the light language, I was able to, I feel like I want to say, I don't know if I want to say this, right? I feel like I want to say when I'm working in a certain area in someone's energy field, like do I do that? Literally like transmitting and doing the energy work and the quantum work and the healing. And then before I move on to another spot, I'm already transmuting it with the light language. Like it's so weird now that I think about that I'm not necessarily going to the table at the end of a session and kind of like sending it all down to Gaia as we were so classically trained to do, but
right.
being in that moment and knowing like when I was finished with an area and being able to transmute it for both of us right then and there.
Mhm.
Um, and that was a shift for me and to be doing that in a light language where I may or may not be translating. There's another T word, right? Translating what that was, what I was doing, but needing to feel it and knowing that before I moved on in the session that nope, that's been cleared and it's now it's time to move to the next. I think that's the first time I've talked about that.
Mm,
Um, and it would be very powerful to be in that transmuting phase in the middle of a session, right? It was almost like the session would be going like this because then I would move on to something else. But I know for me personally, like um, for me personally, transmuting is after a session, if I can't get outside and get my feet on the ground, I live in Boston. I don't, there's sometimes there's 2 or 3 feet of snow outside and my habit was to drop my bag outside of my car and stand on the grass before I get in my car and leave just to make sure that I was clear and not always having that option and being able to use that language with myself, that expression and that cleansing and the clearing that I was able to deeply go in my channel, right? And just and trusting to the divine to move the energy where it needed to go, not where I was trained for it to go.
right.
We don't just always drop it down to Gaia. And it was like, again, let's move into more expansion, like, but not to carry it. And I found that certain dialects for me come in and take care of that and not always needing to know, but just feeling like, okay, phew, that's been done. I'm good. I can move on to the next
Yes.
part of my night. And that's just this beautiful whole other experience with transmuting. And I
Yeah,
love that there were two totally different ones. And I know as a practitioner, you also must be using it to do that with
I
clients
do.
too.
I do. And I'm, that was a beautiful share. And just thinking back to what I shared, I almost feel like the two words can kind of interchange because it was like I was taught, you asked me about transmuting, but when I started talking about, I was just rethinking, like it sounded like I was talking more about transmuting or
When we
transmitting
started, I
versus
couldn't even get the words straight, right?
transmuting. So transmitting, it's like we're transmitting this energy, this frequency through us. But at the same time, we're transmuting these lower vibrational frequencies,
Thank
right?
you.
It's like this interchangeable or exchange because you're doing both, right? You're
Yes.
transmitting, and when you're transmitting, you're also transmuting. And so I've been really feeling like if there's something that I'm working on to clear with a clients or uh myself, I will kind of coach them to use their breath, to just like
Hmm.
the way I see it happening. I try to get them involved in it too and participate as, because we're all healers, as taking control, having some control and empowerment in really feeling into their own body. And I know you do this too with your clients. Uh, whether they're seeing it or feeling it or just having this knowing or this trust that this is moving out. We are clearing this. And sometimes it is, sending it into Gaia. Sometimes it is seeing it as something, forget, I was working with someone the other day and it was like we were sending it out into the ethers. It was just like
Mhm.
just disintegrating. So you can use these visual descriptions. But again, for me, like you were saying, it's a felt sense when the dialect or the frequency is coming through. I know when to stop. Like it's a feeling, when it's
Yeah.
done, right? It's like or the dialect will just kind of change. It changes to another frequency and you move on to
Yeah.
another part of their body or um and sometimes it's not a physical thing, right? Because there's this body mind connection where there's no separation, right? Um so yeah.
Yeah. And I think as practitioners, I don't think we intentionally ever do it. Um, I think our hearts always want to do it, but we are a sovereign being as in standing as the healer in the practitioner phase sense. That there are times we take on the emotion, we take on the feeling.
An
There are many
empath
times
too.
I'm the one
uh,
who's the channel's coming in, and maybe a relative has stepped in and isn't expressing
mhm.
an emotion of love thread, and we get caught up in it, and I have found that I need to transmute after that, um to clear myself from the session. And I think that's where I was getting at, where usually I drop my bag and stand on the grass, or I could be found laying on it, usually right on the
Yes,
curb,
that
like laying
too.
back on the grass.
Or just
um
touching a tree, putting
yeah,
your hand on the tree or
but
standing in
the
the sun.
Yeah, and
Big
tree,
part.
right? Like and there's the transmitting again. Like how many times are we out putting our hands on the tree, and I feel like the old used to be like, oh, I'm feeling this, and now it's like I'm transmitting with the tree. Um,
Mm.
I had an invitation 2 years ago to go on a women's hike that a friend does, and she was like, do you want to come out and channel the trees while we're walking, like, and we'll stop and we should do that. We should get together with her and do that. But the intention would be that to be transmitting the light language from the tree
Mhm.
to be experienced and felt with the group as we were out in nature. Like there's just so many ways. I mean, sitting with flowers and like it just goes on from. I mean, have you ever been on a like a whale watch or a dolphin, right? And it's not even the light language at that point. Like we're feeling the joy.
The joy.
I had
Yeah.
that. And I was with my daughter on a dolphin cruise. We were down in Florida, and standing with her on Mother's Day, and a mama and a baby dolphin came up, and I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, Dios, shut the cookie. Like I was just in pure joy, and I wanted to scream it and feel it, but it was like,
Yeah.
I'm like, she doesn't need me to hear, she doesn't need to hear that, so I'm not going to transmute that to her, but transmit it to her.
Transmit it.
What a
But
crazy subject.
yeah, but she's
She's
feeling
feeling
your
the joy.
energy, the
There's
joy
that
that
heart to
you're,
heart, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
without the
beautiful.
speaking.
And
Yeah.
we're here with the trees, and we're here with the animals, and we're here to code with them and to speak with them and receive and to give. Um,
Yeah.
there's always that poor bird that hits the window a little too hard, and you got to go out. And when I go out to do that, or when I'm driving on the highway, if there's an animal who has met with a truck, and I can't even drive past it without speaking light language, like
Mm,
"Lascia tu corpo," like I like it comes through me,
feeling. Yeah.
like almost like that animal spirit is still lingering there, and it's waiting for me to drive by and release it. and
Mhm. Yeah.
and it's just an
Beautiful.
experience, but it's getting so bad, like, oh, I'm driving down the road crying all the time because I'm feeling it so deeply. But my point being that, like, the light language has brought me much closer to myself and much closer to that feeling, and those walls, those bricks in the walls coming down and not being afraid. And how beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just thinking back to one very dark night of the soul that I had probably in the fall of 2022, and just I was alone in my house in the middle of the night, just sobbing, and the light language was just pouring through me. And
Yeah,
it was almost like I had somebody there with me. I did, you're right. I
it
was
does.
alone. And
It
it was
feels like
like,
that.
even though I was in, and we'll talk, that's another subject, another dark nights of the soul. But just that such grief, experiencing such grief, but being able to express it not just through my tears, but through the light language coming through. It was an energy, this such loving energy, like, even though you're in such pain right now, you are not alone, and you are going to
Yeah,
get through this.
yeah.
So
That's
it's
such a beautiful.
powerful. It's so
Yeah.
powerful. And I am just so grateful to have been exposed to it. And I love, as you do, working with people and activating people to their own light languages, their own soul language, whether they express it through their voice or through writing or art forms or gestures. Um, and if any of you are interested in learning more about that, please, feel free to reach out or ask any questions. We are here as building a
Post questions
community.
below. Yeah,
Post questions
use the
below.
questions
Yeah.
below.
And we
We'll
would
come back on
love
and
to know
answer.
how many that are watching this are channeling
Are
now.
you speaking
How
your
are you speaking?
language?
Oh, two geese just flew by.
The sun's catching you. And it's so funny because you just did that, because it's like many, many, many times I'm feeling a cockatoo come through. I'm speaking with the bees, right? There's butterfly, there's so
Yes,
many
mosquito I
energetic
channeled the other day.
levels, right? Spiders, praying mantis, like amazing. It's all around us. It's all around us. It's all energy, and it's pouring through us. It wants to be heard. It wants to be seen. It wants to be felt. And light language has just shown up for me as a beautiful, beautiful modality to stand within myself and be able to express that to others.
Yeah,
Yeah,
beautiful. No, yes,
amazing.
na shitikia atoroko toroya shatekia narayatarako asaroko toria narakia tarayushitakoya.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you, Diane. Thank It was a beautiful closer for us.
Thank you, and we'll see you all in the
We'll be
next
back.
one.
We'll be back.